What's going on, everybody? This is Jeremy here with the Coalesce Fitness Solutions podcast, and I'd like to welcome to the show today Steve Gagliano, correct?
Yes.
Gagliano, I pronounced that correct?
Correct.
I was about to say Gagliani, but I don't know what I was going to say. In my head, I tried to read what I wrote in my head. Gagliano. Steve Gagliano from Tormented Souls Tattoo Shop. You are our neighbor. We've been neighbors for about 6 years, and we just met a week ago.
Yeah. Yeah, weird.
So, I was walking around recently, and I was kind of meeting people, our neighbors and stuff, networking, talking to different people, and just kind of introducing ourselves, like getting out and seeing people. And I stopped by your shop and started talking to Alicia, and she was telling me about how you'd lost a bunch of weight, or you started eating differently and working on your nutrition a couple of years ago. And I thought to myself, well, that would be an interesting podcast. Like, you're not a member here. We've never worked together nutritionally or exercise-wise. But why I thought that's important is because for our members, for our audience, for people who listen to our podcast and stuff, knowing that nutrition, like the kind of impact that nutrition and sleep and diet and exercise can have on someone is important. So I wanted to talk to you about this and record the conversation about nutrition, about how it changed your life, and like the kind of effects that it's had. So if you before all that, if you don't mind, just an introduction, like who are you, how long you been in business, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so like you said, my name is Steve. Tattooing now it's going to be 21 years. I'm in business. Next June will be 21 years that I'm open. So I was only tattooing for like 6 months before I opened my store.
Oh, wow.
But I've done a lot of things before just tattooing. I've tried so many different jobs, like construction, and I was a graphic designer. I do stunts sometimes still. I've done, I don't know. So I never knew what I wanted to do, so I tried a little bit of everything.
So what made you finally land on tattooing?
It was kind of like when I was about 17, my brothers came up with the idea of doing tattoos, and my parents were like, my mom, not my parent, both parents. My mom was like, "Hey, you crazy? Only sailors and biker guys get that stuff." Because it was like, I was 17, it was 1988, so it wasn't as popular as now. So I always had it in the back of my head. I'm like, wow, that would be kind of a cool job. And then I went to different shops, and people, my brothers went to high school with this guy, and he did tattooing. So they were like, why don't you talk to Frankie? And I'm like, all right, let's see, So I started asking him about it, and he was really nice, but he was like discouraging. So every avenue I went to was discouraging. They just, they didn't really want to teach anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of put it in the back of my head. A couple of years later, I got into doing... I went to college for art, and then I didn't really like Suffolk County, so I ended up not doing that. And then I was doing like acting and a little bit of stunts here and there, and so I would do a lot of like, I want to say side jobs. I worked for different people doing different things, so I learned so many things. I worked for a sign guy, I worked doing construction, all kinds of things. But I told them from the beginning, if I get a call for an acting job, like, I have to leave. I'll be here. I'll never call in sick. Other than that, and they all were cool with it. So every once in a while, I would get this random call and go for an audition. Drive, take the train, hop to go to the city, take an hour to get there, spend 5 minutes on an audition, turn right around, come back home, and like nothing. So by the time I was 28, I was like, man, if I don't find a real job, I'm going to be a loser living at my parents' house. So I started doing graphic design, and then in one of the classes, they asked us to do a little research on something else that we were interested in, another form of art. I have a black belt in karate. I love like all different types of art. I've used to play the guitar a little bit. Anyway, so I decided to pick tattooing again. And so I did a report on tattooing, and it just re-sparked my interest. So I started searching around again, and nobody, again, just kept walking into walls, like people who didn't want to help me. So I found Frankie again. I kept annoying this guy. He kept getting fired from a whole bunch of shops, and I never knew why. He was like such a nice guy. Turned out that he was doing like extracurricular activities, that you shouldn't be doing. And he kept
on
getting
the shop's time.
Yeah, like he would be nodding off, and I was
Right.
oh, why are you so tired, man?
I was up late last night,
yeah,
bro.
my kid, man. And I was like, little I know he was doing like pretty heavy stuff, and he kept, he got caught and whatever. I don't want to pick on him too much because he did help me eventually.
Yes.
So I kept annoying him and following him and being persistent, and I probably followed him to like 4 or 5 different tattoo shops, and then finally I was like, you know what? If you don't show me, I'm just going to do this on my own. He's like, you can't do it on your own. And then I ended up tattooing a friend of mine at in my parents' kitchen, which I do not recommend. Totally like against that now.
At-home surgeries or at-home tattoos.
It's terrible.
Against
really not a good
recommendations.
idea. Not sanitary. But Frankie ended up showing up and helped me, and then I ended up working over here where my store used to be called Pat's Tattoo.
Okay.
For many years. And I kept hanging around. Eventually the owner hired me. He was another one. Like I seem like I have a problem with everybody, but I'm really actually a nice guy. He was like, because of Frankie, again, he must have been taking, things that he shouldn't have been.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up getting fired. And then he was accusing me, and I was like, dude, I don't steal anything from anybody. It's like, if something goes missing, I feel guilty. Like, it's just not how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that. So I ended up leaving, and then I opened a shop in Kings Park, and I was there for, I don't know, maybe 6 years. Then the shop went from Pat's till like 4 a.m, and then they closed, and then I started talking to Larry, the landlord, and he said, why don't you open a second shop? I'm like, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then had the 2 shops for a while.
Was the first one Tormented Souls?
Yeah.
And you just moved?
This is Tormented Souls 2. But,
Okay.
And then I shut the other one down and just stayed here because it was bigger.
Right.
And the rent was better. Everything was better. The landlord's
Location.
nicer. Like,
Shout out to Larry.
I really like Larry a lot. He's a good guy.
He's always been good to me.
Yeah.
He's
I
always
like
been easy to
Larry.
work with. Pay the rent on time. He doesn't fuck
That's
with you
it.
too much.
Just do what you're supposed to do. That's it.
So when you opened here, you were just working for yourself, or you had other people working for you as well?
When I first opened, I brought the well, I had 2 shops for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say it was around 2008. It was either 2006 or 2008. I believe it was 2008. I had 2 shops open for about 2 years. And then I decided to shut the other one down because I couldn't keep an eye on everybody. And, it's hard to do 2 things at once. And then I moved here and made this one a tiny bit bigger, so I didn't need the 2 spaces.
So you've been in this location now for how long?
Since 2008, I believe.
Okay, so 15 years here?
Was it that long?
Just
Oh my
about, yeah,
God,
2003,
that's
man.
crazy.
2022. Next year's 23, and that'll be about 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Do you have a specialty
I
or
like,
an area of particular interest?
yeah, I pretty much tattoo everything, but I'm more interested in more realistic type of tattoos or something that looks more like a painting
Mm-hmm.
rather than like the old school Sailor Jerry cartoons.
Right, like American traditional kind of stuff.
Not,
I've watched several episodes of Ink Master. I kind of know my stuff.
I do have a respect for that stuff because that's, I'm not going to say it's where it started because it started way before that. I mean, Aborigines have
Right.
tattoos, but I just feel like we evolved a little bit past the cartoons.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm not putting it down. I'm just saying like I like a challenge. The harder the
I would
better.
imagine that just like similarly to basically everything, the internet had to change tattooing because of what became available when people actually saw, besides what was in like Inked magazine or something like that. Like you like in real time, especially since the explosion of social media, like you're seeing tattoo artists from. There's a guy I follow from like Switzerland. His name's like Casa Ink, I think. Johnny Mesquita Dominga. No, that's like a bunch of tattoo artists I've been following on Instagram, where it's like, what is like? It looks like they're like taking stickers out of like a printer and just like slapping it on. So I would imagine it had to like make you go like, okay, so this is really what's going on. This is really what's out there, and increases the interest in it.
100%. I was like, I thought I was doing all right. I was like, wow, I'm not bad at this. And then you see people from like Australia or like, are like, whoa,
Right.
What the hell is this guy doing? And then it just makes you try harder.
Yeah.
I've gotten so much better just because of what you're saying. It's like you didn't even realize that stuff existed or
Right.
you could be done. But I believe if one man can do something, another man can do it. So or women or whatever, or if somebody
Person.
identifies
Right.
as a whatever, you know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So if any person can do something, that means it's possible. So another person can do it.
Where do you think that attitude comes from? Just think like that like if one person can do it, another person can do it.
I'm like pretty stubborn. Growing up, I was told there was a lot of things I couldn't do, and I would just do it to prove people wrong.
Right.
Like even this thing with my dieting, and I've gotten in much better shape than I've ever been in. I could show you pictures when I was in my early 20s and I worked out and I practiced karate, and I'm in better shape now than I was then, and healthier.
Right.
And people said, you know, you're older now. You can't, what makes you think that's going to happen? I'm like, no. Why? There's got to be a way. Jack LaLanne can't be the only old person on the planet. Well, now I think he passed away, but
I think
that was in pretty good shape for his age.
Right. Well, I think what Jack LaLanne did probably way ahead of his time is, like as far as a fitness celebrity, he's probably the first real fitness celebrity. He practiced what he preached. He ate good. He exercised, till the day he died. And that was basically, that's the secret formula. Like if you're looking for a secret formula for longevity, it's eat good, sleep good, exercise, and,
enjoy
that's
life.
basically it. Like you want to be free and able to do all the things that you want to be able to do, like that you were able to do when you're 20 or 30. Like it's like eat good, exercise, and your body will stay in pretty good condition. Like I just started martial arts. I just started doing jiu-jitsu about like a year and a half ago, and I'm 42. And the narrative that we typically hear everywhere is like, oh, like you're past your prime, you're 30 years old, you're 35, you're 40. And I'm like, okay, I could definitely beat the hell out of myself from when I was 20 or 25 or 30 or 35 or even 40 for that matter, just because of what I know now that I didn't know then. But also, like, because of training for martial arts, like now, like your body becomes more flexible. You become better attuned to like just spatial awareness, decision making. But like all of the apprehensions I had about even starting were like, I'm gonna be the old guy. I'm gonna get my butt kicked by these dudes, and like, yeah, I get my ass handed to me every single training session. But now it's been like a little over a year. So now it's like, now there's like newer guys coming in. Some of them are 24, 25, wrestled their whole lives, but in jiu-jitsu, it's grappling. So like, yeah, they have grappling experience, but they don't have jiu-jitsu experience. So like, you're like using stuff on them that they don't know, or like they're going to get on top and start attacking because they're wrestlers. They're able to do that. But in jiu-jitsu, like you're on your back and you're attacking. Like, so like, like things that like they don't. So I'll get tired faster than they do and that stuff like that, but my energy's pretty good for someone my age, and I'm not losing, whatever. Like it's all training. I'm not like in there competing, but if I were to believe what you're told all the time, like I would have never even started. And now that I've started, I'm like, I really wish I would have done this earlier, because I would have had, probably better capabilities if I compare what I was able to do with my strength and conditioning in my early 30s and apply that to like martial arts. Well, I probably would have been better at martial arts, but I probably would have got hurt because I would have been too dumb to be as like intentional about my training.
Right.
Like I'm very much like, I know the consequences of being stupid. So like I'm gonna like, if I feel like I'm like a guy's gonna just dominate me, I'm gonna just be defensive. I'm not trying to do something stupid and trying to like pull off some kind of victory that I don't deserve. Just like stuff like that. Like I think mentally, like I want to be able to do this for another 8 or 10 or 20 years. So therefore, I need to be tactical about it.
One thing I mean, this is suggestions to totally different type of martial art, but you practice as much as you can, and then you try not to think. Like what I mean by that is, if you go up to an opponent and you're already like, oh, if he comes at me like this, I'm going to do that. And you kind of just react, and things just happen. Because like people's appearance are very misleading.
Very misleading.
So you might think this kid's a monster. He's
twig,
going to maul me.
or the other way
It
around.
doesn't happen. All of a sudden you tie him in a knot, and you're like, "Whoa, that was easy."
Right. Yeah.
And it does, or the other way around.
Or the other way
Like
around. You
Buster Douglas.
you look at someone who's like 5 foot tall and like 120 pounds, and you're like, this dude, you're like, whatever. Like, the thing I've learned now, especially being in a martial arts facility and like seeing people train, it's like these men and women walking in their shirt and tie, like they're an accountant, they're a banker, they're also a black belt, and like you just watch them like twist people up in like twice, 3 times their size.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter, because it's about the skill, it's about the application of the art of martial arts. And I've always been a UFC fan, but having started, and I did like a year of martial arts when I was like 8 years old. I wrestled for like a year when I was in like 8th grade. Outside of that, it was strictly like I enjoy watching people fight. Now that I have spent a little bit of time learning, now it's like the obsession is like just like fighters are by far the highest level of physical performance. Like there's no sport that comes even close to the level of conditioning, strength, athleticism that it takes to be a fighter. Like you can't look at like a UFC fighter and think that's not an apex athlete. Even the worst condition, like heavyweight, is still an apex athlete. And even like, because even boxing, it's like, yeah, that conditioning is like super high, but like, well, no, I would say boxing, like, whatever, it's a different rule set, but the type of conditioning that a boxer needs to be in. So fight sports in general.
That's my favorite too.
Boxing.
Well, any kind of fighting.
Yes.
My brother said to me one time, he's like, "Oh, you're not really into sports," and I said, "Nah," because they like football, baseball,
right? Team sports.
He's like, "Why is that?" I'm like, "I don't know. There's something about watching a bunch of grown men in capri spandex pants chasing each other around that just doesn't interest me." I'm like, if that's your thing, that's cool, but it's just not for me.
Yeah.
A guy going into the ring, the team help him get him there, but he's there 100% on his own.
Yep.
There's nobody helping him after that. And you're giving it 100%, or you're getting your ass beat.
Everything matters.
I have so much more respect for that than somebody that could throw a ball in a basket. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying that takes talent and technique also, but it's like watching ping pong. Like, I don't really care.
But probably similarly, like even within martial arts, like someone who doesn't know jiu-jitsu would probably be very bored watching jiu-jitsu unless they know what they're looking at.
Right.
You could see like when there's scrambles and stuff, but when you start to look at like where they're making grips or like how they're entering or how they're trying to pass, like it's stuff that's super technical and probably to an untrained eye it's like boring. But like when you start to know the game, and then in UFC and MMA, it's like, okay, well, that's like the ground application of it. But when you just watch jiu-jitsu, it's like you probably wouldn't know what you're looking at until like the guy's like being hung out to dry by his gi.
Exactly. It looks like there's like nothing going on for a while.
All of a sudden, he's like got his elbow snapped in half. So martial arts. Well, how old are you when you started martial arts?
Originally, it was 13.
Okay.
And I took taekwondo.
And then you did karate, or
it was well, I did. So my parents sent me to just like YMCA to do this taekwondo. I think it was in Smithtown, and they didn't think I'd like it, but I really liked it. But they couldn't afford to keep sending me there, so they were hoping that in a way I didn't like it. But I was like, no, this is cool. So they couldn't afford to send me. So a couple of years later, it's like a little bit of a personal story. I have an autoimmune disease. I lost my hair when I was 18. So what happened was I was like one of the only white bald
do you mind
people.
If I ask what autoimmune?
It's called alopecia.
Okay.
Yeah, so there wasn't very many white bald people around. So people harassed me. They thought I was a punk or a skinhead or whatever. And I got tired of it. So I ended up paying for myself. I took another style. It's called Shirin-Ryu. It's basically half Japanese, half Chinese. And the thing I liked about it was like full contact, and they didn't have hands or foot pads or even a head protection.
Mm-hmm.
So when we would fight, we'd have this body armor on, but you would have to hit the person.
Mm-hmm.
If you just gave him a little tap, you weren't getting the point.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to knock this guy down or knock the wind out of him, basically. And with Taekwondo, it was like this point system where you just like, you know, you throw a punch and you just miss the guy's head and it's like, oh, point, or you just tap him a tiny bit. I mean, this isn't realistic, because in a real situation, you're going to be pulling your punches because you practiced that for so long. So that's why and then I started doing that, and I ended up, they said it would take the minimum, usually the average person would take 5 years to get a black belt. I got it in 3.
Oh, wow.
Because I also did wrestling in like junior high school. So I guess because of a little bit of the Taekwondo background, I got up to a green belt. That helped a little bit. But they said if you took first place in a tournament, you would get promoted to the next belt. And it just kept working out. Like I kept taking first place. And I just got promoted because I took a regular test. But then a couple of months later, we ended up going to a tournament, and I ended up winning, and they promoted me again and again and again and again. I kept, so I did okay with it. And then I think I took first place the day I got my black belt. Oh, yeah.
That's a good
prize
for winning.
You know what it is? Because some of these black belts had it for years. And it's a little bit of like, they would beat on you a little bit, when you were a lower belt. But now, it's like, all right, here I am. It was fun.
Give it back to them. So you basically had a pretty athletic life, basically from the beginning. You did martial arts, exercised, but you said about how long ago was it that you got into intermittent fasting?
All right, so real quick, so I probably exercised from the time I was 13 to roughly, I'm going to say 28, and then I didn't do it. I didn't work out until I was about, say, 43 roughly. 42, 43, and it worked out really hard for about, I felt terrible. I mean, I would bend down to tie my shoes and my back would go out. I had bad heartburn. I had man boobs. I didn't feel well, at all, really. I had this mental fog that it was like I couldn't even think. My memory was bad. And I'm thinking to myself one day, I went through a bad breakup. I went through a bunch of bad breakups. I kept dating the same type of people with different faces and names,
Right.
And I was like, I just kept thinking about myself and my life. And I'm like, you know what? I have my own business. I'm a hard worker. I was working 6 days a week up until a couple of years ago. I have a house, new vehicle, and I don't do drugs. I don't hang out at bars. Like, I'm a pretty good guy. Like, I don't rob people, and I'm like, I just keep screwing this thing up in the relationship end of it. So it's like, if I don't change something, and I was a lot more introverted. Not when I was really young. It was bad. Like you would say hello to me, I wouldn't even answer you. And then the karate helped me out. Then the acting helped me out. And then owning my own business helped me. And I just kept getting a little bit more outgoing. So I was like, if I don't change what I'm doing, I'm going to keep getting what I already have. So what can I change? I'm not going to change my job and this and that, but I have to change my personality. So the first thing I was like, I need to work on my health, because at 50, in my earlier 40s, I'm like at the halfway point now. If I don't do something different, this ain't going to go well.
Right.
So I worked out really hard for about 2 years. I started eating better, and was working out like 6-7 days a week, doing cardio and heavy weights. And about 2 years, and I'm like looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, man, I don't look that much better. For the effort that I'm putting in, I'd rather go back to eating fucking cake.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, what am I doing? Like, so I got, and if I'm rambling, please stop me.
Sure.
So I kind of put the word out there. Like, I know it might sound strange, but in the universe, however you want to say, God or whatever, I'm not religious, but I believe what I believe. And I was like, I need talking to myself. I need help. Like, this ain't working. So 2 weeks later, I bump into this guy. He was a customer of mine, and I hadn't seen him in a while. And he looked great. Like, I didn't remember him being in as good a shape that he was in. And I was like, wow, Tommy, what are you doing? Like, you doing steroids or something? And he's like, nah, Steve, I'm doing this thing called intermittent fasting. I'm like, what the hell is that? He's like, it's like when you eat in a certain window and then you don't eat. And I'm like, He's like, you're really only eating in this small few hours a day. And I'm like, that doesn't make any. Everybody's ever told me since I'm a teenager, you have to eat these small meals throughout the day and da 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 da. He's like, yeah, it's a bunch of crap. I'm like, all right. I'm like, why would he lie to me? He's not trying to sell me anything. So I was like, there was a guy at the gym. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I bumped into this guy. I kept seeing him at the gym. His name's Frank Seppi. He's a world-renowned bodybuilder. I mean, this guy knows everybody. Arnold Schwarzenegger, like Lou Ferrigno, everybody. This guy's that's his life. That's all he does, is works out, and he does media for them and holds these, bodybuilding competitions and all kind of stuff. He's good friends with the guy from Bev's, the owner of Bev's. Yeah, Steve, I believe his name.
I don't know the owner. I'm just familiar with
He's a great guy, too. Anyway, so I go to Frank, and I'm like, hey, Frank, can I ask you a question? He's like, yeah, ask me whatever you want. Yeah, Steve, I used to do steroids. I'm like, no, Frank, no, I wasn't going to ask you that. I go, he doesn't do anything now as far as I know, and the guy looks amazing. He's like 50 years old around. So I said, you ever hear of intermittent fasting? He says, oh, yeah. He goes, do you know Wolverine, Hugh Jackman? I go, yeah. He goes, that's how he gets in that kind of shape for the movies. I go, really? The guy's like in his 50s, right? Well, I don't know what he is now, but he was. He goes, what about Terry Crews? You know Terry Crews? I go, yeah, that guy's huge. He goes, he does the same thing. I go, really? These guys are older guys, and they look phenomenal. I don't, I go, I really want to try this, but everybody's telling me it's like, it's a bad idea. He goes, what are you listening to people for? He goes, try it for a month. If you're not happy with the result, go back to eating cake.
Easy.
He goes, that's it. Just try from. Don't listen to people.
The cake will always be there.
Says, the masses are asses, so you can't listen. Everybody has.
Make sure I write that down. The masses are asses.
I like that quote, but I did not make that up. I don't know. It might have been William Shakespeare. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So, but I do like the quote, and it's true. Everyone follows the herd. They're like lemmings. They just follow the next lemmings right off the freaking mountain.
Yes.
To their death. So. And now here's a chance, coincidence, fate, whatever you want to call it. Another week goes by, and I'm sitting in my store, and I get a magazine comes to the store, written, the little tag on it says, to the owner of, whatever this business is, Tormented Souls, or new resident or whatever. And it's men's health or men's fitness or something. And on the cover is Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine, not as the Wolverine, I'm sorry. Hugh Jackman talking about intermittent fasting. And I'm like, this is a freaking sign, man. I got to try this. So I go to my workout partner the next day, and I'm like, I'm thinking about doing it. He's like, it's a bunch of crap. It's never going to work.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to try it. Go ahead. One day I lose 5 pounds. And I'm thinking, like, something's not right there. Either, it was water weight, or I'm thinking, like, nah, I can't, whatever. So the first week goes by, I lose 10. He sees me the following Monday, and he's like, are you losing weight? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, how you doing that? I'm like, intermittent fasting. It's a bunch of crap. It's not going to work. When you put the weight back on, I'm going to laugh at you. Go ahead, do it. Yeah. And within a month, I'm down 20. And I'm like, and I feel better. I have more energy, and I'm like, more mental clarity. I'm like, what is going on? And then I think I lost a total of around 35. Huh. And I've never felt better, even if, like, I tend to like to still lift kind of heavy.
Right.
And if you get a little injury, it seems to heal a little bit faster. The mental fog is gone. My memory's gotten better. I had eczema on my legs for years. That went away. Heartburn for 20 years. I was taking Nexium and Prevacid and Prilosec and all of this crap. Then you read the side effects. It's like dementia and this and that. And I'm like, I don't need that. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have, I'm not going to have heartburn, but I'm not going to remember my own name.
I was fine with the
heartburn.
Fine with the heartburn, but it's the dementia I can't do with.
So I've been doing it. Sorry, the long answer to your question was, it's roughly 5 years, a little over. I think September of 23 will be 6 years.
Oh, wow.
But I noticed results. I got a 6-pack from never having one ever in 3 months. I had a 6-pack, and I have one now, and I'm going to be 52.
So, do you still stay within the same hours window that you did initially? So, what's a typical day look like for you? Like,
I've had to change it through the years. When I first started,
when you first started, it was
literally the first day I did a 14-hour fast and lost like I think it was 5 pounds or close to 5 pounds. And then I was like, wow, if 14 hours works, what if I do this? And then I kept increasing it as the months went on.
Mm-hmm.
And now, well, for a couple of years, like say, the past 2 years, I would be doing a 21-hour fast. It was normal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started including, and now in the beginning, I didn't even take a cheat day for like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a cheat day. I'd be at a party and everybody was like, oh, you got to eat something. Meanwhile, it's always fat people telling you you're doing something wrong. Like, you can't, that's not good for you. I remember telling a customer of mine, real quick story. I told him he wanted to lose weight. He's a little bit older too. I told him what to do. He lost weight. He started looking really good. And the guy he worked with was like, that can't be good for you. As he's eating like Fig Newtons. Like, this guy's like 300 pounds.
There's figs in those.
Yeah.
It's a fruit.
And sugar and everything, right? So he texts me out of nowhere. I didn't know he was at work or even had this guy sitting next to him. So he texts me. He's like, Steve, are you sure this is good for you? So I'm sitting there like, what is this guy doing? I'm like, the guy is losing weight. It's working. Why is he second guessing this? I'm thinking to myself. So I'm like, somebody got in his head. So I text him back, stop listening to fat people. So he starts laughing, and the guy sitting next to him is like, what? He's eating the Fig Newton.
Yeah, he's probably got
he shows him
a bag of McDonald's fries or something.
Doing steroids.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay. Well, that's a compliment.
That's like the best compliment when you're like, when you just started eating better, you're training good, and someone's like, are you on steroids? Like,
yeah,
no,
I got that
on
accused
steroids.
a lot. My brother accused me for that, and I was like, that was a nice thing you ever said to me.
It's most people have no idea what steroids even really do. They just see someone who got into better shape than they're, and they're like, oh, he must be cheating.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not really what steroids do.
It has nothing to do with, even if you were doing it, like how you got to put hard work behind
it. Yeah, like 90% of people on steroids aren't doing the stuff that they need to do. Most people who are on steroids don't look like they're on steroids. They're probably using them to get huge most of the time.
Right.
But, whatever. Steroids are whatever. They're probably not a great idea for most people. If you're in a sport, I don't know.
I don't think it's a good idea.
It's probably not
Honestly,
a good idea.
I don't think it's a good idea.
It's probably not.
Unless you have a medical situation where you naturally have low testosterone and you're really not feeling well, and you know what I mean. And it's under doctor supervision, maybe.
There's probably a lot more. The problem with most steroids and growth hormones and that kind of stuff. The research isn't there because it's been banned. Right. So there's probably thousands of reasons why steroids or growth hormones would be beneficial for people that we're going to spend another 10, 20, 30 years even starting to get into because of like all of the restrictions around whatever performance enhancing drugs. Similarly to medical marijuana,
I was just going to say
the same
that.
thing. Like
exactly
all of the benefits of medical marijuana aren't going to come out for the next 20 or 30 years because we're starting to hear it now because it's been almost 5 or 10 years since Colorado, California, Washington all legalized for recreational, and now in New York it's just starting to get to the point where we're seeing. Well, I guess technically it's legal for recreation here now, but we only got medical 2 or 3 years ago. So there is plenty of reasons why medical use for performance-enhancing drugs and marijuana are all going to be useful, but we've lived in this, like, I don't know what you want to call it, like state where like we're just not allowed, the research isn't there yet. But I think we're going to see a lot of that coming out where like it's not just going to be like for adults who are losing muscle mass at a rate that is from either autoimmune stuff. Like my grandmother basically wasted away from autoimmune. Like her last like 15 or 20 years, it was like rapid decline. And I was like, like put her on growth hormones, put her on something. Like this was like 10 or 15 years, but there wouldn't have been the research wasn't there for how do you use this in a senior citizen,
right.
So I think in sports, it's if both people were allowed to use whatever they wanted and they had to disclose whatever, if it was in part of the rule set, like performance enhancing drugs are fine, you're agreeing to fight a guy who's also allowed to do the same thing that you are, or whatever sport you're talking about. Well, then why would it be against the rules? If everyone's either allowed to or not, then that's the athlete's choice.
Right.
But if it's against the rules, it's against the rules.
Right. We're all adults.
Right.
So not,
yeah. Like if you want to, under a doctor's supervision or not, take a performance enhancing drug, that's fine if it's part of the rules. Like that's why athletes get in so much trouble, is because they're taking stuff that may or may not be against USADA or WADA, which are the governing bodies behind drug testing within MMA and NFL. And that, I don't know. Actually, I don't know if USADA's in the NFL. I don't know if they have their own testing body. Anyway, so it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. We probably won't know for,
I mean, I promise you I won't go too far into it, but there's other factors like marijuana. They used to make cough syrup back in the early 1900s with it. So this stuff has been around. It's just that, big pharma gets in the way and they decide, you're not doing that now. So unfortunately, that does happen.
Oh, with marijuana.
I mean, even cocaine used to be in Coca-Cola.
Yeah, they made a good decision in taking that out.
I never tried it, so I have no idea.
I mean, I feel like the evidence is pretty clear that like there's kind of a difference between cannabis and
trust
cocaine.
Me, I don't even smoke marijuana because I don't like the way it makes me feel.
Yeah. But
I've never done, the only thing I ever tried was mushrooms, and I thought that was pretty amazing. Yeah. But from what I hear, cocaine's not addicting. I have no idea, to be honest with you.
I know plenty of people who have struggled and lost their lives over it not being addictive. So
I'm not looking. Too much caffeine makes me jittery, so I'm not looking to do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with the caffeine. I take a lot of it in the morning, and then I don't. I'm here at like 4 a.m., 4:30, so I'll drink a bunch of caffeine, and then that's usually like gets me through most of the day. So, we talked about brain fog, which was another thing that I thought was very interesting. And one of the things that, as someone who does, you're an artist, you're a creative person, photography, stunts. I imagine that art, graphic design has been part of your life, so you have something to compare it to as far as what was like creatively. So, prior to changing your nutrition, what was your creative process? How did changing your nutrition help?
Well, so I would feel like I'd get, writer's block, if that makes sense, because it's art though, but I guess writing is an art too. But so I would have a lot of trouble coming up with ideas, and literally, like, dude, my memory was bad. It was embarrassing at times. I'd be talking to a customer and they leave the room and they come back and I wouldn't even remember they walked in. That it was like that. It was scary. It was like early stages of dementia almost. And I went to a neurologist because in the past I had I had vertigo, so they thought he was asking me questions and he was like, remember pencil, staple, and whatever, and I couldn't even remember. I remember it now. You know what I mean? The brain,
it's somewhere in the subconscious it got in.
Yeah, so I'm not a nutritionist or a doctor or anything like that, or claiming to be one, but I think that what's happening is that when you eat, food that isn't that great for you, or very often throughout the day, your body is spiking insulin, and the worse the food, the higher the insulin spike. That's where you're getting the fog is from the carbs and things like that, because if you have you have turkey and a big Thanksgiving meal like many people had a week or two ago, you feel tired and lethargic and you feel like crap. So people, when you're eating, you're taking in all the sugar and carbs breaks down the sugar. You're spiking your insulin and your body's shutting down. So even the whole idea, and I'm not saying it can't work for everybody's different. That's I want to just put that out there. Maybe some people could eat the small meals a day. Didn't work for me. Right. It made me more hungry. I can't do it. Like the little insulin spike that you kept having throughout the day. What happens is human growth hormone and insulin work like polar opposites of each other. So it takes anywhere, depending on the person, anywhere from 6 to like 13 hours after your last meal for your insulin to go down and your human growth hormone to start. So if you had a little snack before you went to bed, and then you slept for 8 hours, and you woke up and you had breakfast or put milk in your coffee, your human growth hormone did nothing. And that's most of the world, America at least. Mm-hmm. So now, 2 hours later, you have a little snack, and then you have lunch another 2 hours later, and maybe a little snack, and then, so all day long, your insulin spike and spike and spike, and you become insulin resistant. Insulin's supposed to soften up your cells to allow nutrients into your cell. Mm. But when you become insulin resistant, even if you're eating good food, it's going to be stored to fat. Mm. So, and what I also want to tell people, so basically what you want to do is you want to tap into your fat storage. And by doing that, from not eating, your human growth hormone, especially in men, can increase up to 2,000%. And we're not doing anything artificial. This is all natural. Mm-hmm. So now you're going to start tapping into your storage. Like, wow, I haven't eaten in a while. I better, and then that's what your body starts feeding off of that. You get into ketosis, and then you start losing weight. Now, the energy is wild because now all of a sudden, if you ever described someone as being hungry, oh, you're like, that kid's hungry, he's a go-getter. Mm-hmm. You're not describing a hungry person as obese. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, unless you're like, I guess you could, but usually hungry people are more energetic, and you'll feel like, I haven't eaten yet, and I feel like a slight little vibration that happens. Mm-hmm. Some people say it's jitters, but it's actually a good feeling for me because I know it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. The human growth hormones working, tapping into the fat storage.
And you're not a coffee person, right?
No, I do.
In the morning?
Yes, I have it in the morning, and then sometimes I'll have this isn't like that most healthy thing, but I'll have an energy drink, and sometimes in the middle.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I'm one of those. But I tell the truth. I'm not, I'm not going to BS people.
Well, I think that's the thing, though, is that when 90%, 95% of your nutrition is organized, it's intentional, you're only eating certain foods, you're only eating certain times, whatever the thing is, having an energy drink or a diet soda or whatever is not going to do anything to you. Your body's going to just process that out, no big deal. It's when you're doing that every single day and all 3 meals are fast food or you're just running in and out of 7-Eleven grabbing whatever snacks,
exactly.
That's when that stuff becomes a problem. Is it the best thing for you? Probably not, but there's an exchange rate on everything that you do, right? Yes, the preservatives, the chemicals, the flavor sweetenings, all the stuff that they're putting into whatever it is, like a 5-hour energy shot or a Red Bull, probably not the best for you. But when you're giving your body the best chance it has to recover from whatever you do, whether you fall and you get injured, your body has the nutrients to recover from that. Similarly, your body's going to be able to process through all the preservatives and other stuff that's in that single drink or whatever it is, that your ice cream or whatever on the weekend. You're not going to lose any ground from that. Whereas most people think it's either perfection or nothing, but it's not. It's you have to have, if you make all these big changes and you see all this progress, once you get down to that point where you feel good, you look good, you're thinking clearly, there's room for making decisions that aren't optimal, whatever.
Right. I noticed with we were talking a little earlier.
And you probably actually get benefit from it too. You probably actually feel energized by it.
I do, and sometimes I really have to be focused because I like to do intricate tattoos, and I really need to be sharp. So if I at all feel a little tired, then I'll take a couple sips out of it as I'm working through the tattoo to keep myself on the ball. Mm-hmm. We were talking about what did I say? Well, I wanted to say about too much caffeine is not good because your body starts producing cortisol. Mm-hmm. Cortisol makes you hold on to body fat. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to overdo anything really. Mm-hmm. If you have an energy drink, it's not going to be like you said, the worst thing in the world. And then the other thing I want to just touch back on was, I was saying in the beginning when I first started intermittent fasting, I didn't have a cheat day for 6 months, and then I gradually would do it only on holidays, and then once a month, and then now it's like once a week. And sometimes I'll do it 2 times a week or 3 times a week because, you know, I don't even feel well, to be honest with you. After I have a cheat day, I feel bloated. I don't really like the feeling. But sometimes I know if I'm losing a little too much weight. But my cheat day is probably not terrible compared to the average person. You know what I mean?
Your cheat meal
I'm having
is probably
like a sweet potato.
Right. Right. Is that so? Is it most of your food now? Does it consist of more natural foods, or is it mostly protein? Is there any sort of?
I do lean towards a keto type of diet. So I try to have. You don't want to have too much protein. Like if you overdo it, it'll actually turn to sugar. So like. I try to increase my fat intake a little bit, like avocados, believe it or not, butter, like a lot of these things, heavy cream that they told us was so horrible. I mean, there's good and bad about everything. If you drink too much water, you will literally drown, right? You'll drown your organs out, you'll physically drown. I don't believe in the whole thing that you got to drink a gallon of water a day. I don't. I think that's ridiculous because you're flushing out all your electrolytes. If you're not taking an electrolyte supplement and you're drinking a gallon of water a day, and what if you had a lump of fat sitting on a table and I dump water on it, it will not dissolve. So I don't know where that came from. You're not peeing it out. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe it'll curb your appetite a little bit.
It'll definitely curb your appetite.
It doesn't. It never worked for me. I just end up being in the bathroom more often. I'm not saying don't drink water.
Like so. I think that the thing with water is that especially when people are exercising, they're not replenishing the water that they expel. So
I don't even sweat.
You mostly do strength training?
Yeah, I stopped doing the cardio about 5 years ago when I started the intermittent fasting because I was doing it like several days a week. That's probably the best
motivation.
Less
cardio.
This is look. I'm not claiming to know everything or be right, so I don't want to. People to feel like I'm putting what they're doing down. I'm just saying what works for me. And I noticed that, like, especially if you look at a marathon runner who's very athletic, right? And then you look at a sprinter, very different body types.
Yes.
The sprinter's doing HIIT cardio, which I'm 100% for. I try to do that through strength training when I'm doing heavy weights. I try to do more of a HIIT type cardio, but I'm not actually running. Marathon run is running for whatever it is, a whole marathon, and they look thin and flabby, most of them, not everybody, but thinner and flabby usually. And the reason why is because they're burning up their muscle and their body's in like this panic mode going, this guy's overdoing it, let me store whatever he has to fat, and will you keep that for an emergency that never comes? That's my opinion. That's my observation. Yeah, my observation.
That's not an observation. That's actually 100% what happens. So that's the types of muscle fibers that are being used in those two situations is different too. So a sprinter is using a lot more of the type 2 explosive, fast twitch stuff, whereas the marathoner is using the slow twitch stuff, and they're just be able to go forever. The explosive stuff that you're doing, like either a sprint or max or 1 rep max lift, is a different type of muscle fiber than the stuff that you use when you're running a very far distance.
Right.
So the muscle responds to those two things differently. That's why sprinters are jacked, because their muscles have to be huge and explosive and powerful, whereas someone who's doing long cardio, they're going to be thinner and a lot less muscle mass, because their muscle is made to just go. They're just fat burning machines.
But yet they're still flabby.
Yeah, there's skinny fat, right? It's like
exactly.
their skin, or they're holding so little body fat and muscle that their skin just kind of hangs on their body. Like they're not filling in. Your skin can only get so skinny. Right. It's going to only be so so adaptable to the stretch reflex you lose that as you age. So when you're burning all your fat, your muscle is degenerating. Now your skin is just kind of hanging there. And for most people who want to lose weight, like typically that's not the look that they're really going for, but that's the thing that they go and do because that's what the muscle and fitness magazines tell them to go do. Get on the treadmill, get on the elliptical, spend 4 hours. Whereas maybe just eat a little bit better, train for an hour a day, 3 to 4 days a week, depending on your goals. For most people, for most of the average person who's not doing anything, 2 to 3 days a week of exercise from zero is a huge improvement. But the things that you're doing outside of your exercise are going to be the biggest, that's going to make the biggest deal around your entire life. Exercise is great for, you want to move better, you want your body to feel good, you want to develop muscle, you want to burn some calories. But that's not going to be the thing that changes everything. Like, because you exercised pretty much your whole life up until you changed your nutrition and found intermittent fasting. And like you'd said too, like that's the thing that worked for you. Like there are all kinds of nutritional guidelines and frameworks that work for all different kinds of people. But the fact is that like you found one that worked at a life-changing capacity, to now you perform better mentally, your art's better, like you have better ideas, like they're coming to you more freely. You're exercising better, you're more clarity. So all these things change drastically as a result of doing something that's seemingly drastic, but now in hindsight, you're probably like, if I would have known I would have got this out of it, I would have done it 20 years earlier.
100%.
Because it's a big change. You start, like, now you got to think about your food. You got to think about cooking. You're not able to go in and, like, you're not going to stop at McDonald's or Wendy's. And I think for most people thinking about making a change in their lives, whether it be losing weight or getting strong or like trying to get off of medications, the first stop is nutrition. If you can get your nutrition together, you're going to save yourself a lot of trouble. Exercise is, for me, the thing I value from exercise is getting your chemical, like your body hormonally, chemically, you're going to get response out of doing that, increasing serotonin, increasing dopamine, increasing your adrenaline, testosterone. All of the chemicals that are in your body by lifting weights are going to be beneficial. You're going to see an increase in all of those things. If you're sore, if your body is in pain, it needs to move. Like most people are sedentary, especially in a lifestyle where most people are sitting at work 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and then wondering why their backs are killing them because they're stuck in one position all day.
Exactly.
So exercise is great for most people. Value exercise for weight loss way higher than it should be. For weight loss, it's the nutrition, it's lifestyle, it's how much are you sleeping, how well are you dealing with stress, and what are you eating. Those are the things that are going to make the biggest impact on most people. Would you agree with that, just from your experience?
100%. I think it's like in the top 90-something%. Like, because I could show you pictures of me when I worked out really hard 6-7 days a week, and I was eating pretty good, not like I do now. And the only thing, the biggest change with the intermittent fasting, I look like a different person. Like, it worked. And the food, like, I don't think you can outwork a bad diet. You know what I mean? Like, you can be exercise and doing all this stuff, but if you're eating candy bars, you're not helping yourself at all. That whole corny saying when we were younger, and what you are, what you eat, is like totally true. Like, people don't realize the effect. Think about, you're hanging out somewhere and people are smoking or something, you're breathing in, you feel sick. So imagine just like you're constantly eating bad food. It's going to change. You're going to morph into a mess. You know what I mean? Over time, like you don't notice it right away, but as time goes on, it just starts eating away at you.
It's like that low grade exposure. Like they say, like if you cook to cook a frog in a pot of water, like if you turn it up too fast, like the frog jumps out. Like the heat goes from 0 to 100, the frog feels the change in heat 100%. And jumps out because they're cold-blooded. But if you turn that heat up slowly, because the frog is cold-blooded, it's not noticing that change slowly over time, and all of a sudden it's cooked and it's dead. 100%. And that similarly, that's what happens, I think, with us, because when you're 20 or 25, you're eating a Snickers bar, you're eating a slice of pizza, you're eating at Taco Bell, you're exercising, so you're staying in pretty good shape, no big deal. Like you hit 30 years old, all of a sudden the Taco Bell is a little less forgiving, the weight starts to increase, your energy levels are a lot lower, and you don't realize, like, okay, like what I got away with through my teens, through my 20s, into my 30s, like now my body's starting to reject it. Like I'm starting to feel like crap. I feel like the brain fog, the man boobs, all those side effects that you talked about, earlier. like those are the things that like, well, where did this come from? Well, no, it's been coming all this time. Like it's been gradual over time, and all of a sudden, well, people are in like a house fire and they're like, oh, I gotta escape. And then they take drastic measures as opposed to like, okay, well, what if I just change one thing right now? What's the thing that I can change that has the most impact? And for myself, I've tried the warrior diet. I've tried the paleo diet. Warrior diet's essentially it's intermittent fasting, but it had all the same rules as paleo. So like no grains, no legumes, no dairy, mainly just lots of protein, lots of vegetables, like big salads, that kind of stuff. I still pretty much intermittent fast. I typically most days only have coffee before like 2 p.m. and it's not really on purpose, but like it is because I don't usually eat while I'm here. So I'll go home and have lunch, and it's just kind of a groove I got into when I started doing this. It's just I don't really like to stop and eat in the middle of the morning. But when you first start doing something like that, it's like this drastic change. Everyone thinks you're crazy. But I think that the thing that we've talked about is when you first did it and everyone's telling you you're crazy, did it seem like that big of a change when you first did it? What was the adaptation time like for you?
I honestly thought it was going to be a lot harder. So the beginning, well, it was a mentally harder, I think, and physically. By the second week, I almost quit because I wasn't keeping up on electrolytes. And when I say that, I don't mean Gatorade. It's not, Gatorade's full of sugar and stuff. So I increased my fats a little bit and electrolytes, and I felt a world of difference better. So the beginning was like, I was like still figuring things out, So I kept going on like YouTube and looking. And it just was researching. There's a couple of guys on there that really seem to know their stuff, and it just really, I'm sorry, I totally got off track a little bit.
What we were just talking about, the initial phase of it, how hard, like, did it seem as you said 2 weeks in, you were the electrolyte
the first
stuff?
2 weeks was a little tough, but I mean, we've all been, hungry, and then we're working and didn't have time to eat because we were busy, and then a half an hour, 45 minutes later, you'll realize that, wow, I'm not hungry anymore.
Right.
So there's another hormone that we produce called ghrelin. Ghrelin's the hunger hormone. So if every time you get used to it, it's like a biological clock or whatever. Like if you eat at 12 o'clock every day, by 11:30, you're going to start to get hungry. It's like a dog or a cat or any animal. It's going to do the same thing. You start to get hungry, but you just, you have some seltzer or whatever, water, and then you just get past it, and all of a sudden you're not hungry anymore, and you have more energy. Yeah.
So we're actually like an hour in already. So I wanted to just.
I have so much I want to say.
Yeah, we did.
I'm sorry.
No, we got a lot covered.
There's another thing, just real fast. I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
When you do long fasting, like. Everybody's different again, but if you go over like 20 hours, 25, everybody's different, 30 hours, your body goes into autophagy or autophagy. I don't know the proper way to pronounce that.
That sounds right. I've heard that word.
And it means self-eating.
Okay.
So what happens is unbelievable. Your body kills off all your weak blood cells and converts them to energy. So now, first of all, you're getting more energy by doing that. And then when you start reproducing new blood cells, now you're reproducing them at a higher quality, so you never get sick. Like I got my wife got COVID, and I had to bring her to the hospital, and it turned out that they just had to give her electrolytes, and she was fine. I took her home, and then like she wasn't like doing cartwheels, like, but she looked like she was gonna die literally. And then after electrolytes, she walked out of the hospital, and then each day she got better. A couple of months later, I got COVID. I didn't even know I had it. And my wife, she's a nurse, and she looks at me. She's like, I think you have COVID. I'm like, what are you talking about? How do you look at somebody and say, But I ended up taking a test, and she was right. I didn't feel sick at all. I took my temperature. It went up slightly. I took it to 100 or 101. I didn't even feel achy, nothing. Took one Tylenol. The fever went away, never came back. And I just basically stayed quarantined for 2 weeks. And she was like a little aggravated with me.
Yeah.
Because she was really sick, and I'm like doing pull-ups and riding my mountain bike around the block because I was bored.
Right.
So my point is that, thank God, I haven't been sick in years. And I think I attribute it to that, because
absolutely.
every year...
Your immune system is 100% built on the foundation of the nutrition, the nutrients that you're giving it to fight with. If you have good energy, good nutrition, your body's going to have all the necessary tools that it needs to fight off infection, regardless of whether or not that is a new infection that just came out or same old flus, colds, whatever. Your body recovers based on like how you treat it. If you have plenty of good nutrients, if you have plenty of rest, like you're gonna fight off infection and sickness a lot faster, live a lot longer. There's no all of those things are the reason why nutrition should matter for you, no matter whether or not it's an aesthetic or not. Like if people are like, I understand that like not everyone wants to be thin, not everyone wants to be like skinny. Like it's not something that I particularly want. I'm not like, I don't need to be 8% body fat. It's not what I don't want to eat to be like that. I understand what that takes to get there.
Enjoy your life.
I want to enjoy my life, but like at the same time, I'm very conscious of what I do and don't eat. Like there are things I'm never going to eat, and there are things that I'll eat, like pizza or whatever, if I'm at my mother's or whatever for a holiday. But most of the time I'm going to avoid processed foods. Most of the time I'm going to have something that either came from an animal or was picked from a farm or a tree. Like if it's not a naturally occurring, it's the bulk of my diet is food that you could go out and find in nature. And similarly, like when I think I had COVID the first week of it. I've been sick. Like my wife just had the flu, and she was like dying. There was a nationwide shortage on flu tests, so she didn't actually get diagnosed with it because they didn't have one. But they were like, it's probably the flu. There's not enough tests. But she was out for like 3 or 4 days, and I'm still, I still haven't gotten it. Knock on wood or whatever. But I also think it's part of like, she's a school teacher, so like she's this is her first full year in the school district. So, but I'm going to martial arts. I'm in the gym. I'm around a bunch of people all the time. Like, so I think I have to be getting exposed to viruses. Like you're grappling with people face to face, like blood, like sweat, and whatever. And like a couple weeks ago, I had a cough. That was a different thing. Like it kind of came and went. I got a little phlegmy from it, but like I haven't been incapacitated sick in a very long time. And I think that those are the benefits of nutrition that most people aren't thinking about. They're just thinking strictly in terms of like body positivity and like I don't need to lose weight. And that's if you're happy with the way you look and feel and perform, cool. Here's all the other reasons why nutrition needs to be on your radar, the brain fog, the energy, all those things that we talked about, all the like your immune system. So with that, Steve, any closing thoughts on nutrition, tattooing?
The only thing I do, again, this is I'm not a doctor, so I guess it's an opinion. And it may be a fact, I don't know, but I feel that sugar is probably the leading cause of cancer, because from what I understand, cancer can't live in an alkaline environment. So if you cut out the sugar, your body's not going to be as acidic.
There is a whole host of things that cutting out sugar will help with.
Diabetes,
depression, anxiety. I mean,
believe it or not, intermittent fasting helped me with depression. I know I have so many aspects of my life that it helped me with. I can't even tell you. I sound like I'm trying to sell you something, but the greatest part about it is there's nothing to buy.
Well, that's the thing, is that like when you go out and you find the thing that works and you don't quit until you find it, like I'm a person who's just not satisfied like with, this worked, but like I still want more. I still need tools in the toolbox, and I'm going to leverage my chances of success as much as I can. I don't want to be depressed. I don't want to be like curled up in a ball from depression and anxiety. I don't want to be going through mood swings. And all of those things happen. They all happen a lot worse for me if I'm not being mindful of my nutrition. So thank you for coming. This has been an awesome conversation. It's like almost 1:10. It's 1:10 now. I know you have to eat your lunch before you start tattooing people. So Steve Gagliano. Steve Gagliano owns Gaglione Strength, and that's why it's tripping me up because I keep wanting to say Gagliano. What a terrible fucking host.
No. When our, my relatives, my grandparents came over on the, to Ellis Island because we're Italian. They just was like, whatever you said your name was, whatever they thought they heard is what they wrote down. So I could somehow be related to that person.
Yeah.
Just they spell it differently though.
So Steve Gagliano, Tormented Souls Tattoos, 2090 Jericho Turnpike, East Northport. You're what, 2 months out on your waiting list, something like that?
Well, it changes. Anywhere from 2 to 4 months usually.
All right. So if you're local to East Northport, looking to get a tattoo specializing in realism, is that what you said?
Mostly.
That's what interests you the most.
I like it,
yeah. So swing by, come visit us. Also, we're right next door. 2090 Jericho Turnpike. Steve,
awesome.
Thank you for your time.
I really appreciate it.
I'll hit that.